It seems to me like my boyfriend has a crush on a woman we met. It's making me uncomfortable. Is there a productive way to approach this? Last week my boyfriend of 4 years and I went on an experiential vacation, a guided group vacation that we signed up for together. Others in the group were strangers to us. That was a lot of fun and we got to see a new place. Just for context, we signed up with a friend of mine. My friend also brought 2 other friends, one of whom, let's call her Lisa, I had very briefly met before. She is a friendly, interesting, and attractive woman. There were 20 or so other people on this group trip, which was run by a company. Over the course of the trip it became somewhat apparent to me that my boyfriend had a weird level of interest in Lisa. I think he might just be really unaware how obvious it was to me. After meeting her for 30 seconds on the first day of the trip, later that night he asked me a bunch of questions about her, including whether she's married and whether she has kids. He definitely did not have the same interest in other people we met that day. I found his questions odd from the get-go. As the trip progressed, he started constantly asking me if Lisa was coming to dinner with us or whether I had seen Lisa yet that day. He said some excessively complimentary things about her to me, like I bet Lisa is used to being the most badass woman at most things she goes to. There was one day that he and I got split up at different activities and when I saw him a few hours later one of the first things he asked me was if Lisa had been with me. When we went out to group dinners with her his behavior was like he was alone on a first date with this woman. Asking her a bunch of questions about herself and taking no interest in anybody else at the table. Multiple times he said to her that he and I should get her number so that we can get dinner with her and her husband in the future. There was also at least once he complimented her outfit, which was something he never once did for me during this vacation. Weirdest thing was on the last day of the trip, we had a long 10-hour drive back to our hometown ahead of us and he offered to Lisa to pick her up to help her transfer her baggage to her next hotel. She had already said she was going to take an Uber and this was an hour-long task that required us to delay our departure for our long trip and therefore get home really late. I said in front of both of them that I thought it wasn't a good idea, because honestly it wasn't. He did ask me about it later on and I said I thought it was bizarre that he offered. That's the only discussion we've had about any of this. Topping off everything else, he was intimate with me 0 times during the 8-day-long trip despite my effort to initiate, and there was one morning where he shared with me that he had a dream someone had told me he was cheating on me. He felt pretty distant the whole trip and like he was avoiding touching me at all. Which would have made me sad regardless of the Lisa thing, but it's hard for all of that to feel like a coincidence. I would like to say that I think it's normal in long-term relationships to have a crush on other people once in a while. I also know he didn't actually betray me, given how the trip was structured. That's just not even possible. Also, Lisa is lovely and did absolutely nothing wrong. However, I feel like his inability to hide this crush was hurtful and honestly kind of embarrassing for me. I genuinely think he had no awareness of how obvious it was, but it feels like it affected his and my relationship during an experience where we should have been able to connect with each other. If I confront him about it, it would be easy for him to say he has no idea what I'm talking about and that he didn't do anything untoward. I want to allow space for being attracted to other people, as long as he can manage those feelings in a respectful way, so I really need to figure out a way for it to be productive and not attacking him if I start a conversation about it. I would really appreciate advice on how to handle it. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but I feel hurt and really bad about myself over this. Comment. He's infatuated with a married woman he met for a few hours. He ignored you right there in front of him. He didn't respond to or initiate intimacy with you the entire week. Yes, he's got a crush and yes, it's a big one. I'd tell him you had a couple of things you wanted to let him know about. Sit down. Make him look at you. Ask him not to respond till you tell him you've said everything. Then read this to him, all but the apology-sounding comments from you about how to approach him. Instead say that you are hurt, confused and angry about being ignored your entire vacation while he drooled over another woman, married no less. Tell him the details that you've left out here. If you cry, cry, but keep on speaking. When you've said it all, just ask him to think about it for a couple of hours and then you'll be ready to listen. Don't let him interrupt you. When a couple of hours have gone by, listen and speak nothing in answer until he's done. Then don't talk about any of it for a day. After that, try a conversation. This matters. This is for all the marbles. His behavior may or may not be something you choose to forgive. I have my own opinion of what I'd feel and say, but I highly recommend this method as a great couples counselor once recommended it to me. It brought resolution. XO, I hope you get what you want. He will probably deny it, because he may very well not see it himself. This is one of the things you need to do for your relationship. When your gut tells you there is a problem, you need to address it. A lot of cheating happens when I knew there was a problem with person X, but I did not want to say something because I would look insecure, and then a few months later they are cheating. You talk to him because you value your relationship and you want to protect it. You want to get in the practice of putting an end to a problematic interaction before it drifts to something that is beyond an odd conversation to fix. Each of you should see that as a responsibility within the relationship, by the way. The person who is involved, at that early stage when the other partner gets that gut warning, often is not honestly aware of the fact they are drifting into someone else's orbit. They depend on their partner at that point to help them out and point out the danger they are putting the relationship in. I'm not sure why you weren't confident enough to broach the subject while he was doing this. Even a light-hearted chat may have made him aware how inappropriate he was. I think you should talk to him about it, especially the lack of physical affection or interest during the trip. However, if you don't want to speak about it now, then be careful that any future chat may be heavily skewed by resentment you may have and his surprise at being blindsided. The exception to all of this? If he now pursues building a friendship with her, and her husband. You cannot allow that to happen with telling him everything that's in this post. I really think you just need to communicate more. Simply let him know how you're feeling and how this has affected you. Come at it from your point of view. Good luck. Hun, to me it's a red flag that you don't feel comfortable addressing things that bother you with him. I say that from experience, because my ex made me feel guilty for ever expressing any unhappiness with how things were. Turns out he was cheating on me the entire time with multiple women. Now I am dating someone who always hears and validates my concerns even if they are hard to hear. I cry, on my own, not to him. More than half the time I have to discuss difficult topics because of those past experiences with my ex, and it has really made me realize how badly I was treated. I think you should reflect deeply on whether you feel heard and your feelings respected in your relationship. If you don't feel that way and you guys struggle to have productive convos about difficult aspects of a relationship, I don't know that it gets better, especially if it's an issue the other person has to work on but won't even acknowledge. And all of this is aside from the disrespect of actively taking an interest in another person right in front of you. It sounds like you deserve much better, but only you know the whole of your relationship. Best of luck. You don't need for him to agree that he behaved inappropriately and hurt your feelings. They are your feelings, no one knows them better than you. His behavior was unquestionably inappropriate, even from reading about it. I'm sure it was even more obvious in person. Sit him down and tell him, don't ask him, that his attention to her and lack of attention for you was noticeable and will not be tolerated. God, I'd be afraid of what he could have done if you weren't on that trip with him. Granted, Lisa would have to be a consenting participant. Definitely talk to him and don't hold back on how his actions affected you. If he can't take responsibility and tries to gaslight you in any way, I'd seriously consider cutting him out of your life. People get little moments in relationships where they might get a little interested in someone. I always know when my partner is interested in someone else. The difference is he is respectful enough to at least pretend he isn't and never follows up on any of it. I can trust that he would never try to actually act on those thoughts. I just know cause I know him better than he thinks I do. He would probably get offended at me even saying this. He would never blow me off or try to disrespect me in front of someone else though. Your guy treated you pretty shitty, and that is where I'd be drawing a line. It's normal to find someone attractive. It's not normal to treat your actual partner like an afterthought, however. The fact he was even asking you questions like you were his wingman rather than his partner is insane to me. Just have a conversation with him. Tell him the way he acted was not respectful or subtle and it's unacceptable. Next story 2. My boyfriend didn't tell me he invited a friend to dinner with his family. So my boyfriend and I have been together for last 5 years. He lives in Auckland and I live in Wellington. We have been doing long distance for a couple of months since I moved here for work. We have been having lots of petty fights, and last week instead of ending things we decided to set some ground rules. Mostly my idea. Solution was whenever we have a disagreement, instead of fighting or yelling right away, we would ask so to explain their behavior or a particular thing that's bothering me/him. Since it's long distance, he told me that it bothers him when I go out without telling him. I don't have many friends, and since I'm new here I don't know anybody. At most, I go out is to the grocery store. And I work from home and have to go to the office twice a week. I usually make a point to call him before heading to the grocery store and when I get home. And it's okay with me to call him, yet still he pointed it out and I don't mind, so I agreed. So we both agreed to this and we haven't had a fight since. 3 days ago there was a family reunion at his house. Cousins. I wanted to give him some space so that he could spend some time with his family. We spoke on call in the morning and I didn't have to go out that day, so I didn't call. So now it's 11 p.m.ish and I wanted to call check up on him. He picked up the call but he was in a car. I asked him where he was. He told me that he just dropped off Sarah. I asked him why he had to drop her off, so he told me that he picked her up as well. Since it was a family reunion, I don't know why he had to drop or pick her up. I asked him why he didn't call me/text me before picking her up or dropping her off. He just said it slipped his mind and that was that. I didn't ask further because I didn't want to escalate it or start a fight. Today again, he called me at 7ish and told me he was going out with his sister and her husband to have dinner somewhere. I asked where, but he kind of brushed it off. Because I didn't catch the name or the location of the restaurant. After like an hour or so I really wanted to eat Pringles and had to go to the grocery store, and since we had set the ground rules I wanted to let him know that I was going out to get some snacks. So I called, he picked up, I told him I wanted to get snacks and we spoke for a bit, like 5 minutes. I asked him the restaurant's name, he told me they're almost there, etc. I came back home, he sent me a video of his sis and her husband and I really liked the hotel, so I video called to see more. So get this, couple of minutes into the conversation, I see Jake's sister and her husband are sitting in front of him. I see another female's hand beside him on the table. I kind of freak out and cut the call because I didn't want to make a scene in front of his sister. And I text him asking who it was sitting beside him. It was Sarah. I sent him a bunch of texts saying why he didn't tell me that she was coming. He simply says that he forgot. I told him how could he forget, because he had plenty of opportunities to tell me. It's not like we didn't talk before he went out or after he went out. He could have told me anytime he wanted. But he chose not to. I told him to come clean and be honest with me for once instead of brushing it off under it slipped my mind. It also made me feel like the rules are only for me, and they don't apply to him. I let it slide when he dropped her off and picked her up that day, but this is like the third time for the same person that don't sit right with me. I also don't mind him having women friends, and I don't mind if he wants to go out occasionally with them. The only thing I mind and set me off today was that he didn't tell me and only told me once I saw her arm. He says he called me back because Sarah wanted to say hi to me. In that moment I lost my shit. I don't want to say hi. I am still so angry. When he got back home, he picked my call. I told him there are two ways we can go about discussing this. 1, we can abide by the ground rules of asking and explaining calmly. 2, yeah, old and faithful of calling each other names and fighting. He chose the one, but when I started asking him and explained to him why this bothered me, he told me to quit barking, refused to apologize or even acknowledge his actions. He told me that I was jobless and I don't have anything better to do and my brain is mostly empty. That's why I was overthinking the situation that happened today. So one thing led to another. I won't bother you with the details. He told me he was done with my shit and I told him no, I am the one who is done. And I told him not to come back begging me to be with you when you decide to change your mind. And he told me you're the one who usually does. And it hurt because lately, yes, I usually am the one who, even if it's his fault, I am the first one to call. I feel like the rules are only for me, and if he breaks the rules it's because it slipped his mind and I should understand, but if I break the rule, I'm a slut. It's demeaning and I feel stuck. I try to make the relationship work but it feels like I'm the only one trying. I try to communicate about how it's making me feel, or when something bothers me, he makes me feel like it's not his fault and I end up being the bad guy because I escalate the situation. I don't know what to do right now. I also know that if I don't call him after a fight, I won't ever get a call. I just need some advice on how to move from here. Comment. You did the right thing ending it. That was BS. Him saying he just forgot about Sarah. He didn't respect you or the boundaries you set up, so why bother being in a relationship? I just can't believe how easy it was for him to throw a 5-year relationship away. Your boyfriend is controlling your activity miles away, but he can do whatever he wants. My dear woman, this is completely unhealthy and unreasonable. Why would you want to indulge in this lopsided relationship? You did the right thing. Move on and don't look back. Sounds like your boyfriend is maybe dating Sarah. He's controlling and not a very good boyfriend. You're in a new place. Block, delete and move on. You had to friggin' call him to tell him you're going out for snacks, for heaven's sakes, like a child. enjoy the new city, make friends, forget this loser. Seems he is being pressured / motivated by his family to move on and build a relationship with someone else. Not sure your relationship with his family, but it seems they might be polite to you but lack the respect. They encourage and enable his behavior. In my opinion, your relationship is done already and it would be smart on your part to move on with your life. Don't call him anymore, start working on yours, make some friends and start dating whenever you feel it, set yourself free. If he tries to connect with you, just be cold and brush off things, let him taste his own medicine. If he doesn't, good for you, you just live your life, win-win situation. Needing to call your BF to go to the grocery store? For what? Are you 12? Are you going on the middle of the night at dark in a bad area? This is completely lopsided. Do not call him. I loved your question about how he wants to handle it, but something weird is up here. Have you ever picked up on him and Sarah flirting? Any reason to not trust that? I get that it's okay to have female friends, but here's the thing, especially in long-distance relationships, I did this for like 4 years, 2 of which were across country in US, they take a tremendous amount of trust, transparency, and a little grace on both people. He needs to be completely open to you when he's hanging out with someone of the opposite sex. One of you will get jealous sometimes. One of you will make minor mistakes sometimes. One of you will need to understand that new experiences will happen. If you can survive it, my husband and I did, but with disagreements, arguments, jealousy, forgiveness, and communications. But calling to go to the grocery store? No, that's practically an invasion of privacy. You are an adult and can handle yourself. Your boyfriend and his friend Sarah have something going on. He's a liar and a cheat. Stop begging, okay? That's why he treats you like shit. Nobody respects a beggar. Know your worth. Move on.